So, hey guys, Chauzu here. This is going to be my Gear 5 deep dive. We're going to twist and turn Gear 5 and really get a feel for how to use him, who to use him with, how does he work in PvP, all of the good stuff. So let's just jump right into it. These videos usually get pretty long. But yeah, here we have him in his full glory, the mystical figure in white. So let's jump into it. Gear 5 Monkey D. Luffy. He is a Psy free spirit fighter. He has a rush, even if it's not what you'd expect a rush to be. We'll get back to that. And he has an EX super that is incredibly good. At the time of this recording, we don't really know all the details about EX Super, like can Luffy use it as a captain or as a sub? Like he can as a captain, of course, but can he use it as a sub? If we have any updated info, I will add it in the comments. But yeah, let's jump into this and start with captain ability. Luffy has two different captain abilities. First, he has his normal form, and the main gimmick with the normal form is that Luffy can recover from gear over. This is an incredibly rare ability. The only other legend in the game with this ability is V1 Brook, and it has kept Brook viable as captain for many years, and he saw use as recent as this year in Super Boss Kizuna. That's how valuable this ability is. And when you revive, you turn into Gear 5 and get a new captain ability. So we're going to go talk about that before we move on to the stuff that are the same for both forms. But when you are Gear 5, you lose the ability to revive, since you can become Gear 5 in other ways. But in Gear 5 form, the main gimmick is that you ignore enemies' defensive effects. And if you know how this ability works, it means that you yourself can ignore barriers, damage reduction, damage threshold, and damage immunity. Those are the four main things you can ignore. But it has a downside as well, is that it cancels the crew's defensive effects. Do you have any damage reduction sockets? Cancelled. Any special to reduce damage? That's also cancelled. So you take the maximum damage you can from enemy attacks, basically. And that's the main gimmick in Gear 5 mode. The rest is the same before the modes, it's just that the damage values is a bit different. So in normal form, you have 5.5 times attack to Psy and Free Spirit, 1.2 times HP. You also have a 20% damage reduction, which helps you survive better. Which is a bit weird, I must add, when a bit of the gimmick is to die, that you make it harder to die. I'm actually not a big fan of that 20% damage reduction. You boost the chance of landing on Psy recovery and make Psy recovery slots have matching slot effects. Basically, just boosting the chance is not a big boost. I'd expect maybe one Psy recovery orb every turn guaranteed, basically. If you run double Luffy, it's closer to like 2-3 guaranteed, basically. And with abilities like this, it can be good to invest in the slot rate sockets to increase the rates of matching orbs to just make it even more likelier to get Psy orbs. You can also obtain recovery orbs with Perfect, which is it's usually nice that no matter what you hit, you use the recovery orb. The main downside might be when you have anti-heal content like the recent raid Bonnie. Like if you're always going to eat the orb, it might not be good if you get punished for it. And of course the very strong ability of reducing special reverse and bind by 10 turns, like that's incredibly useful in many other ways, and often that resistance to special reverse and bind will be the reason why you use this unit. Like that's usually the reason you go for captains nowadays in most content, is that they help you resist stuff. And then of course if you can do a lot of damage, that also helps. And in Gear 5 mode, the attack boost is increased to 6 times for Psy and Free Spirit. But both forms actually have attack boost for others, like for normal form, you have a 4.5 times attack boost to everybody. And in Gear 5 mode, it's actually a 5 times attack boost. But instead of damage reduction, Gear 5 actually does a 10% HP cut, so it becomes even harder to survive after the revive. One thing I want to talk about here, which I talked about in a previous video, is that this legend has nothing in the captain ability to help you speed things up. No CD reduction at all, which we have to say is an issue when you have 15 CD special. So it will be incredibly hard to use him in content when he's not boosted, or Psy isn't boosted, or Free Spirit isn't boosted. And that will affect how much you can use him going forward, at least without suffering. As for the special, you do 2 million damage to one enemy, which ignores all defensive effects, including normal attacks only. So no matter what, one enemy is eating 2 million damage guaranteed. Can't believe I said 2,000. But yeah, he also boosts the type effects of normal characters. Well, he does a call affinity boost for Psy Free Spirit characters by 3 times for 1 turn. So if you are a unit with Psy and Free Spirit, you get a 3 times call affinity. If you are a Psy character, you get a 2.75 times call affinity. If you're a Free Spirit, you get a 2.75 times call affinity. I'm very interested in how the buff icon will look here, because usually buff icons only display one value, but now you can have 2 separate values at the same time, which is not common. So it would be interesting to see this. Like, this is pretty unique for a special having different values like this, so they've not really done it in the past. You also changes all slots, including block to Psy, which will be very nice later when we look at the EX special. And if you launch this special when in Gear 5 mode, you boost Psy Free Spirit characters' orbs by 3.25 times for 1 turn. And if you are only Psy, it's a 2.75 times orb boost. If you're only Free Spirit, it's a 2.75 times orb boost. And you reduce every beneficial effect on enemy by 1 turn. So we have a bit of a reliance here on Psy Free Spirit, but luckily there are quite a few. And we'll look at a few of them later as well that you can pair Luffy up with. But it's a bit hard to talk about the whole kit without also talking about the EX supers. We'll do that in a bit. One thing I will note though that I find a bit puzzling is the fact that Luffy can reduce beneficial effects on enemy by 1 turn. As said, we don't really know if you can use the EX super as sub or not. But basically without the EX super, Luffy can't be Gear 5 as sub. So that means you can't take advantage of this effect. But if you use Luffy as captain or in Gear 5 and use the special, like, you already resist enemies' defensive effects, which means that a lot of the use for this special is just gone. Like, it reduces damage threshold. Well, you already ignore it. It reduces damage reduction. You already ignore it. It reduces damage immunity. You already ignore it. Basically, the only viable stuff you can reduce by 1 turn is Death Up and Damage Limiter. And those are definitely things good to reduce, but this is something that sounds incredibly good. But when you think about it a bit more, it's not as great anymore in that context. It might still be really great if you can use Gear 5 Luffy as a sub, but if you can't, this is a big meh in my book. Like, basically mainly about removing damage limiter, I'd say. As for the EX super, harsh condition, but it should be harsh when it has such powerful effect. Need one of the Mugis, or Yamato, or Law, or Kid, or Momo. And if you have Luffy plus 3 of those, so if you run double Luffy for example, you need 3 of the subs to be one of these 3, and you have 1 flex slots. That's pretty harsh on team building. Luckily, Straw Hats is at least a pretty easy condition to have a lot of options with. And we add other characters with a lot of units like all of the rest, like Momo is both the new Legend Momo, but it's also like Legend Toki, which is also absolutely cracked, of course, so lots of potential units to pair with. And with the EX Super Special, we changed the attack multiplier of Psy Recovery to 3 times. Reminder that Wano is a 2.5 times attack multiplier, so this is a lot higher than Wano. We have not had anything close to this high multiplier for orbs in the game before. You also changes Luffy to Gear 5 as said before. This is the only way, except for dying, to become Gear 5 Luffy. And you become Super Free Spirit and Super Psy. So if this EX Super can be used as a sub, it will be absolutely amazing. If it can't, Luffy basically has little reason to be used as sub. And if you're using him as captain, you have some other issues talked about before, like him being very slow, for example. But of course you get a lot of cool benefits as well, like the bind resistance, special reverse resistance, game over resistance, basically you can say. He can revive. So yeah, the EX Super is a big reason why Luffy is actually really strong. Otherwise you'd have to rely on dying, and if you're farming something, maybe you don't want to die every single run, for example. So yeah, amazing EX Super for sure. And yeah, it just makes the unit come together, and having both Psy and Free Spirit in one unit can't be overstated. Moving on, we can talk a bit about the Rush, which at first when you read through it, it sounds incredibly good. But when you look at it a bit more closely, I won't say it ruins the unit, but it's a very big negative, I'd say, overall. Basically, at final battle, you can always activate the Rush if you hit last as the 6th unit. But if you're in Gear 5 form, you can activate the Rush at any time. If you hit 1st or 2nd or 3rd, whatever you want. And basically, it's just like with Sanji, you use your HP, it gets reduced every time you tap with the unit. You also increase the chain. But here's the kicker, the fact that the Rush attack boost is not for Psy units or Free Spirit units or every unit. It's only Luffy, which means that this is more like a glorified final tap than a Rush. Only really Luffy will get a benefit from this. Any unit hitting after Luffy, the only extra benefit they get is a bit higher chain boost. So basically with this Rush, instead of Sanji where you have to hit first, and even if you didn't have to hit first, you want to hit pretty early with Sanji, with Luffy you want to hit as late as possible. So yeah, this basically means that there's a lot less reason to use this Rush. And this Luffy has some other issues with this Rush. So let's say in the future we get another Rush with maybe also some loose requirement of when you use it. Like you can never tap with Luffy before the other Rush unit. And let's say you skip Rush and you want to use Super Tandem and you want Luffy to be part of the Super Tandem change. Well, tough luck, because anytime you tap with Luffy, you activate Rush. And God forbid you activate Rush and Super Tandem the same turn. This meh Rush will overwrite the most likely much better Super Tandem. So it's just very unfortunate all around. And just a big disappointment. Honestly, if this Rush was even close to as good as Sanji's, I would have easily rainbowed this Luffy. Like, we even getting Rush tablets will have been pretty easy. But now, it's a skip. I'm just going to get one copy. Like, I might pull more than one, but I won't continue chasing more dupes, so to say. So that's the Rush. Support is pretty dope. 15% base attack. Speaking of Rush, we can linger a bit on it. I've had 2 potential ways to use the Rush. The first one will be in farm content, basically. So this Rush does add a lot of damage. If you do max it, you will get a big benefit from using it. So basically when you farm, you don't really use final tap because you have to use so many units, it's not worth it. But if you can final tap right away or like on the second hit, like that's another story. So in like against treasure map bosses, for example, if you use Luffy as a sub on a team, like you don't even need to rely on Luffy's special. You just need, of course, somehow getting gear 5. So this kind of relies on gear 5 being possible as a sub. But even as a captain, like you have a lot of resistances. You don't even need to be able to use Luffy's special, steel resist, bind, special reverse. And then you can just basically do the rush, which is a glorified final tap, and do incredible damage right away. So that's a very fast way to use it. Another way to potentially use it against like super bosses and such. Like this might be pretty decent against int bosses, not going to lie. But if we take like in general, like we have actually the fact that even if this rush is basically a final tap, you can still use another final tap. The main issue, of course, is that the final tap doesn't benefit as much because this Luffy eats up the damage himself. But if you use like Luffy Crew Fan Captain, this Gear 5 Luffy as Captain, you can potentially basically get 2 hits with the rush, since Luffy Crew with the final tap will just add the damage that Gear 5 Luffy did again and increase it a bit. So that's a pretty cool combo. And it's kind of more viable because of the EX super as well, since Luffy himself adds so much with both the super type and super claws, so you can get away with using a friend captain that doesn't really do that much. Main issue is that it's basically a bit hard to use his special since you don't want the rainbow orb, stuff like that, but it's a fun potential use I found for the rush. But otherwise, I would have preferred if it was just like Sanji, but Sai and Free Spirit would have been great. Let's look at some partners for Gear 5. If you go here to the beginning. So first we're going to look at units who share Sai and Free Spirit, just like Luffy, because these get the most benefit from Luffy. They both get super type and super claws, and Luffy's buffs gets the higher value of ore boost and call affinity. And just like with Momo, Roger is just a great partner. Maybe not as great as with Momo, but still pretty good. Of course, we still have the resisting the spear, which pairs up well with Luffy, who resists bind. And then, of course, we have the special that gives a big attack boost to go along with the big ore boost and color affinity that Luffy did. So it's a pretty good combo. Another very good combo, we can start with Oden, is Oden, because both Oden is also a Free Spirit captain like Luffy, but Luffy gives super type for Sai and super class Free Spirit. Oden can add Slasher, which boosts his own attack a lot, and there's a lot of Slasher Free Spirits. All of them get the benefit of Slasher and Free Spirit buffs. And Oden himself can also get an attack boost if you're low HP. So yeah, he can also help you with the missing buff from Luffy, basically. As well as the chain multiplier boost with the super claws. Pretty interesting combo you can do. We also have the film Red Luffy. Like with Luffy, you're going to want to be a Lastroia team, which benefits this Luffy. And you even have a final tap, so you can do the rush final tap combo. Maybe not as good as with Luffy Crew, but still 2 hard-hitting Sai units in the end. And Luffy can, of course, do the missing buffs too. He can even increase the attack boost and ore boost that you've done. So yeah, he's an interesting option for sure. Moving on, we have General Frankie, who is Free Spirit and Sai in 2 of the 3 forms. And yeah, you have a pretty nice resistance in this duo, like Luffy resisting bind and special reverse, and then Frankie with the attack down and burn resistance. Makes it easier for team building, and with the special then you can also get that attack boost that Luffy lacks. And then finally Sanji, just a unit that can help speedrun a bit and can provide the missing buff that Luffy does. And also a Straw Hat, and being a Straw Hat helps with Luffy, of course, for the EX special. Moving on, we have some other side units, and these are actually fighters. Some of them can add the fighter superclass, which helps Luffy do even more damage. But first, let's start with Stampede Luffy, which is a cool captain pairing since he resists the spear paralysis, Gear 5 resists bind special reverse. Luffy himself does an attack boost for himself in the special, so you can build it up to this Luffy himself doing a lot of damage on like a mini boss or something. So a pretty cool combo. We'll definitely try it. We have Rayleigh, who can do an attack boost. Sadly, you can't use them on the same stage, which is unfortunate, but you can use him to ignore defensive effects, so that's always useful on some stage. Then we have the Superclass Fighter trio. There's a lot of Superclass Fighters. Marco, you know what he does, and he can be pretty fast with his Superclass with the CD reduction, Marco Special itself reducing CD. And you just need to try and build a fighter team, but might be possible to build a Psy fighter team. And Marco does do the attack boost that Luffy can't do. Another combo is Jinbei. He can also do an attack boost even if you usually don't want it, but it's a Straw Hat, so you have a unit for the EX special. Sadly, he's just as slow as Luffy, so yeah, not that good in that aspect. Bonnie is also pretty cool. Can apply increased damage taken. Otherwise, she's a Call Affinity booster just like Gear 5, so that is not the best. So they have a bit of overlap, sadly. Finally, we have some other free spirit units with different colors. Yamato is a great pick, especially with stuff like Super Boss, of course. Yamato handles the attack boost that Luffy can't do. You have the potential of getting the damage reduction attack boost, and Yamato resists the spear while Luffy handles the bind resistance. That's really good. We also have Zoro. This is pretty similar to the logic behind like Superclass Fighter or Oden. You can use this Zoro as captain. You can get the Superclass. You can even get an attack boost that Luffy can't do. And this Zoro is just really good in general for Super Boss and stuff like that. So might be a good option if you have a lot of free spirit slashers. Super Tandem Law might be pretty cool. Of course, we have the issue with Gear 5 Super Tandem. Like, this is a good example. Like, if you pair them together, like, yeah, Law resists paralysis. He can give the attack boost that Luffy can't do. He has a Super Tandem that can be used with Luffy. But when you tap with Luffy, he will basically break it. The good thing is that you can tap with Luffy pretty early, so he doesn't activate it, but then you get his rush. But if you don't have any other rush on the team, it's still a chain boost, so it's not too bad, really. So a pretty decent combo. Sabo, another potential combo, mostly since he can help you with getting chain stuff. He can remove special bind, you can set it up so he can auto launch. So just a good free spirit captain in general. And Robin, what do I have to say? She can be used with Gear 5, so you want to use her if you face a Super Boss. That's the units I wanted to showcase with Luffy. I'll probably try a few of them. Let's end this video with talking about Luffy in PvP. I talked about Momo yesterday, and there's going to be some similar topics here. They are meant to be used together after all. Rumble ability, really good. Attack up level 5, def up level 5, speed up level 5, crit up level 5, heals one's self to 50% HP. Like, replace that crit with special CT up or HP up or something and Luffy will be basically perfect. The weight comes in with the special. It targets enemies within large range for 4,500 damage, which is pretty good. Targets side type teammates for attack up level 5 for 30 seconds. And one enemy with high current HP gets hit for 1.5 times damage, ignoring defense. So the way I see it is that if you build a side team, it should have gear 5 on it. But that doesn't mean that gear 5 is on the same level as like Roger Whitebeard or Luffy Yamato. I don't think it is. Like, the ability really strong, adds a lot of stability to the team. But the special is just not at that same level. Sure, you do good spread damage. You buff a fellow side teammate. But the main issue is that it's only one unity really nukes. And the nuke is pretty low, so it's not like it's a guaranteed kill, especially since it targets a high HP enemy. So it can even be an enemy you missed with the spread damage, since it's not guaranteed to hit everybody. Also very high CT, so it takes time to launch it once. And then when you launch it the second time, like we're approaching that 30-second mark at that point. So yeah, I'm not sold at all in terms of being one of the best, but should be used. And we'll have to see if the new side team can beat Apu Int consistently. I'm skeptical, but it will be fun to see. You really want to use this Gear 5 Luffy, you want to use Momo, you want to use V2 Oden, probably Sai Yamato, and then maybe another legend like V3 Law, or maybe the new PvP legend Kawamatsu, or you try and fit 4 PvP rare recruits. One of them has to be Rebecca and Toy Soldier. Finally, Luffy has key piece stats, and this might be the one thing where Luffy really is one of the best in the game for sure, like maybe even the best. Leader scale, side types, attack HP up level 6, special CT speed up level 2, expected that he buffs Sai. Then it's strength and dex, HP speed up level 5, def up level 2. And this actually works pretty well because you will have a side team with Luffy, of course. Then one of the best classes in Grand Party is Slasher. Slasher is majorly strength, so you got the strength team covered basically. And Dex, like Dex is solid in PvP, so you can just build a good Dex team. So the leader skills do work. Burst, you have to do 60,000 damage, which is reliable, I'd say. Could have maybe been a bit lower, but you can't really complain because it's really strong. He hits all enemies, ignoring defense for his base attack times 2.4 times damage. Like, this burst alone can kill teams, like it's insanely strong. Not only that, Strength X side gets attack up, speed up level 8, def up level 4. And if you face Roger teams, like, don't worry, just wait for Roger to use his burst, then use your own, you remove the half stats and you basically nuke the team. So this is legit a unit you can use instead of Roger, and he will actually make Grand Party a lot more fun. At least until everybody starts using him on defense, and now you start complaining about how dumb his burst is and everything like that. But yeah, that's my Gear 5 deep dive. I hope you enjoyed, and let me know if you're going to be pulling for him tomorrow down in the comments. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.